In the first two episodes of this series, we were doing a countdown of the 25 events that defined Indian cricket. We talked of wins. Wins that were achieved on the field against an opponent. But in this episode, we're going to talk about a win of a different kind. One that was achieved against many opponents and over several years. In fact, in this episode today, we're not exactly talking about a single moment either. It's a little different, but for a reason. Because today, we're going to talk about two people who somehow happened to Indian cricket at the same time, and Indian cricket can't be more thankful for that. Any guesses yet? I guess some of you might be thinking Lord's 1996. No, we're not talking about that. In fact, far, far away from Lord's, the theatre in which this moment unfolds is Laknau. I know some of you are still scratching your heads there. Cue for me then to bring in the bumper, on the other side of which we will talk a little bit more about this duo and what they did for Indian cricket. January isn't generally the best time to play cricket in the north of India, definitely not in Lucknow. But in 2002, women's cricket was still fighting too many battles to think about the season they were playing in. The Indian women's team hadn't played a single test match at home since 1995. So any test at this point was important. But looking back, this one in Lucknow holds a special place. And that's because out of the 6 Indian cricketers handed their debuts in this match, 2 teenagers would become synonymous to Indian women's cricket for the next 2 decades. You must have guessed who we are talking about by now. Jhulan Goswami and Mithali Raj, the 2 stalwarts of Indian cricket. Mithali had made her India debut a couple of years earlier, while Jhulan had played her first ODI about a week earlier. So this episode, as I mentioned before, is not exactly about a moment in time, but about a journey that began in the early 2000s. And while it began as a journey of 2 individuals, so powerful were these 2 journeys that Indian cricket was transformed by the time these 2 retired. Born just a week apart from each other, but in very different parts of the country, Mithali and Jhulan took very contrasting roads to cricket. Jhulan first became a fan when she watched the 1992 World Cup. And soon, she was bowling to boys in the streets of Chakda. Of course, the height helped, but it was at the age of 15 when she saw the Australian fast bowler Catherine Fitzpatrick at the Eden Gardens in the Women's World Cup final that Jhulan decided that she wanted to bowl fast in life and nothing else. But for that to happen, she had first to get out of Chakda. And to get out of Chakda, she had to really convince her father, which she eventually did, thanks to her coach Swapan Sadhu. Mithali's cricket, on the other hand, and this is the interesting part, happened entirely because of her father. An Indian Air Force Sergeant, Dorai Raj, wanted his daughter to lead a disciplined lifestyle. Just like a typical Indian father, no? The solution? Send the young girl every morning with her brother to the academy where he was learning to play. About a decade later, this little girl was making history for India with a century on ODI debut. When it's India, parents have to be part of the story. But these 2 fathers surely had no idea how far their daughters would take women's cricket in the country. The 2 represented the nation for more than 2 decades, a feat that Mithali became the first ever woman to achieve. She ended her career with the most runs by a batter in ODIs, while Jhulan finished at the top of the highest wicket takers list in the same format. The 2 orchestrated so many wins for Team India and even played 2 World Cup finals together, one in 2005 and the other in 2017, both with Mithali as captain. And the great thing about these 2 achievements, these 2 incredible careers, lies in the fact that more often than not, they happen in spite of the system and not because of it. It would have taken a lot of will and determination to keep playing the game when there was so little to get out of it. When these 2 started playing, the women's game in India had little infrastructure, a very uncertain governing body, no money, hardly any popularity, and worst of all, no recognition. And all this in an era when men's cricket was thriving and male cricketers were becoming national obsessions. So the battles that they were fighting were not only on the field. They had to give constant reminders to the world that they exist. Sometimes with the bat and ball, sometimes through their words in the media. But all of this, even though very slowly, was having an impact. At the grassroots level, more young girls wanted to be a Mithali or a Jhulan, and in decision-making circles, it was getting too difficult to ignore the rise of women's cricket in the country on the back of these two giants. And it was almost poetic that in the year that these two legends retired from the game, the BCCI made the historic announcement of equal pay for all centrally contracted men and women cricketers in the country. And that's why I really think the arrival of Mithali and Jhulan turned a new page in the story of Indian cricket, and most importantly, paved the way for a bunch of immensely talented women cricketers like Harmanpreet, like Smriti, Deepti, Jamima, Shefali, among others, to take Indian cricket forward. You talk to them today, and you still hear the awe when they say Mithali Di or Jhulan Di. They were torch bearers. The women's game in India will forever owe them a debt. So that was number 23 on our list of events that defined Indian cricket. The simultaneous arrival of these two ladies on the Indian cricket scene. Well, as we always do, we've saved a question for those who've been with us still here. Tell me, when Jhulan picked up her first wicket for India, who took the catch in the slips? Easy peasy. Well, if you're enjoying this series, as I hope you are, do hit that subscribe button.